Sarah Martinez wiped the sweat from her forehead as she carried another box of her belongings to the front porch. The summer heat in Wyoming was brutal, but nothing compared to the burning shame that filled her chest. Her husband of 12 years, Tom, stood by his pickup truck loading his hunting gear and camping equipment. He wouldn't even look at her. "This is really it then?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She had asked this question a dozen times over the past week, hoping for a different answer each time. Tom finally turned to face her. His weathered face showed no emotion, just the same cold determination she had seen when he made up his mind about anything else. "Sarah, I told you already. I can't live like this anymore. I need to be free. I need to hunt, to live off the land, to be what I'm supposed to be." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "You're leaving your wife and daughter for what? To chase buffalo across the plains like some kind of mountain man fantasy?" "It's not a fantasy," Tom snapped. "There's a group of us, real hunters. We're going to live the way men were meant to live, away from all this modern nonsense, away from responsibilities that tie us down." Their 8-year-old daughter Emma appeared in the doorway, clutching her favorite stuffed horse. Her eyes were red from crying. "Daddy, please don't go. I promise I'll be good. I won't ask for toys anymore." Tom's jaw tightened, but he didn't move toward his daughter. "You take care of your mother, Emma. Be a good girl." Sarah felt her heart break watching Emma's face crumble. She pulled her daughter close, fighting back her own tears. "Go inside, sweetie. Daddy has to go now." As Emma disappeared into the house, Sarah faced her husband one last time. "Tom, this is insane. You're throwing away everything we built together. Our home, our family, our life, for what? Some ridiculous idea about living like a caveman?" "You don't understand," Tom said, climbing into his truck. "I've been dying inside this life, working that office job, coming home to the same routine every day. I need something real, something that matters. We matter," Sarah shouted as he started the engine.
"Emma matters."
"I matter." But Tom was already backing out of the driveway. He didn't wave goodbye. He didn't look back. He simply drove away, leaving behind a cloud of dust and 2 broken hearts. Sarah stood on the porch for a long time after his truck disappeared down the highway. The silence was deafening. No more arguing. No more pleading. No more hoping he would change his mind. Just the sound of wind through the grass and Emma crying softly inside the house. The next few days passed in a blur of practicalities. Sarah had to call Tom's work and explain that he wouldn't be coming back. She had to figure out how to pay the mortgage on her teacher's salary alone. She had to explain to Emma's friends why her daddy wouldn't be at the school play next month. The worst part was the look she got in town. Whispered conversations that stopped when she walked by. Pitying glances from other mothers at the grocery store. Everyone in their small Wyoming town knew that Tom Martinez had left his family to go live in the wilderness with a group of hunting enthusiasts who called themselves the Brotherhood of the Buffalo. "It's like something out of a bad movie," Sarah confided to her sister during a late-night phone call. "Grown men pretending they're frontiersmen from the 1800s. Tom actually bought a buckskin jacket and everything. Has he called at all?" Her sister asked. "Not once. Emma keeps asking when he's coming home." "What am I supposed to tell her? That her father chose buffalo meat over his own daughter?" Sarah found herself alternating between rage and despair. Some days she wanted to track Tom down and drag him home. Other days she felt relieved that she no longer had to deal with his increasing restlessness and criticism of their soft, modern lifestyle. The financial pressure was immediate and crushing. Tom had taken half their savings and left Sarah with all the bills. The house payment, Emma's school expenses, groceries, utilities, everything now fell on her shoulders. Her teacher's salary, which had seemed adequate when combined with Tom's income, now felt impossibly small. She started picking up extra work wherever she could find it. Tutoring students after school, babysitting on weekends, even cleaning houses during her summer break. Emma often came with her, quietly doing homework in corners while Sarah scrubbed floors and folded laundry for families who still had both parents at home. "Mommy, are you sad because of me?" Emma asked one evening as they ate dinner together at their small kitchen table. It was just the 2 of them now, and the house felt enormous and empty. "Oh, sweetheart, no," Sarah said, reaching across to squeeze Emma's small hand. "You are the best thing in my whole world. I could never be sad because of you." "Then why do you cry sometimes when you think I'm not looking?" Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes again. She had tried so hard to be strong for Emma, but an 8-year-old notices everything. Sometimes grown-ups get sad about grown-up things. But you know what makes me happy? You do. Every single day. Emma nodded solemnly, then brightened. Mrs. Johnson at school said her cousin lives on a reservation and they have horses. Real horses, not like my stuffed one. Maybe someday we could see them. Maybe someday, Sarah agreed, though she had no idea how they could afford any kind of trip right now. 3 months after Tom left, Sarah received divorce papers in the mail. He wanted to make it official. He wanted his freedom legally documented. There was no request for custody or visitation rights. Tom had walked away from his daughter as completely as he had walked away from his wife. Sarah signed the papers with shaking hands. Part of her had still hoped he would come to his senses and return home. Part of her had imagined him showing up at the door, apologizing, begging for another chance. But the divorce papers made it clear that Tom had no intention of coming back. That night after Emma was asleep, Sarah sat on her front porch and looked up at the stars. The vastness of the Wyoming sky had once made her feel peaceful. Now it just made her feel small and alone. She thought about Tom out there somewhere, living his fantasy life, eating buffalo meat around a campfire, convincing himself he was some kind of noble savage. She thought about Emma's future, about college funds that no longer existed, about dance lessons they couldn't afford, about all the ways their lives had suddenly become smaller and harder. But as she sat there in the darkness, Sarah also felt something else growing inside her. Not just sadness or anger, but a quiet determination. She would figure this out. She would give Emma a good life. She would prove that Tom's abandonment wouldn't destroy them. She just had no idea how drastically her life was about to change, or that help would come from the most unexpected source. The car trouble started on a Tuesday morning in late September. Sarah was driving Emma to school when the engine began making a grinding noise that sounded expensive. She managed to get Emma to class, but on the way to her own job at the elementary school, the car died completely on Highway 87, about 20 miles outside of town. Sarah sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the steering wheel, fighting back tears of frustration. She couldn't afford car repairs. She couldn't afford to miss work. She couldn't afford to be stranded on the side of the road with no backup plan and no husband to call for help. She was reaching for her phone to call her principal and explain why she would be late when she heard the sound of hoofbeats on asphalt. Sarah looked up, wondering if the stress was making her hallucinate. But there, riding toward her on a magnificent paint horse, was a Native American man in his 40s with long black hair and kind eyes. The rider stopped beside her car and dismounted with fluid grace. "Engine trouble?" he asked in a voice that carried the slight accent Sarah recognized from the few Lakota people she had met in Wyoming. "It just died," Sarah said, getting out of her car. "I was trying to get to work, but now—" She gestured helplessly at the smoking engine. "I'm Marcus Crowfeather," the man said, extending his hand. "I live about a mile from here. Would you like me to take a look?" Sarah shook his hand, surprised by the warmth and strength in his grip. "Sarah Martinez. I teach at Pine Ridge Elementary. I really appreciate the offer, but I don't know much about cars and I can't really afford repairs right now anyway." Marcus nodded, understanding. Money's tight everywhere these days. "Mind if I look anyway? Sometimes it's something simple." While Marcus examined her engine, Sarah studied him. He was tall and lean, with weathered hands that spoke of outdoor work. His horse stood patiently nearby, occasionally snorting or shaking its mane. The animal was beautiful, with a coat that mixed brown, white, and black in striking patterns. "Your radiator hose split," Marcus announced after a few minutes. "That's why she overheated and seized up. The good news is it's fixable. The bad news is your engine's going to need some work after running hot like that." Sarah's heart sank. "How much work?" Hard to say without getting her to a shop. "But honestly, this car's seen better days. Might be time to think about something more reliable." "With what money?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "My husband left 3 months ago to go live in the wilderness and hunt buffalo with his new friends. I'm barely keeping up with the house payment as it is." Marcus raised his eyebrows. "He left to hunt buffalo? There aren't any wild buffalo herds around here anymore." "Tell that to Tom. He joined some group called the Brotherhood of the Buffalo. They think they're going to live like mountain men or something." Sarah felt embarrassed sharing this with a stranger, but something about Marcus made her feel safe. "I know those guys," Marcus said, his expression growing serious. "They've been causing problems on reservation land." coming through without permission, leaving trash, disturbing sacred sites. They think they know about traditional hunting, but they don't know anything about respect for the land or the animals. Sounds about right, Sarah muttered. Tom never respected much of anything toward the end. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then said, "Look, I can't fix your car here, but I can give you a ride to town. My truck's back at the house. And if you don't mind me saying so, you look like you could use a friend right now." Sarah felt tears welling up again. It had been so long since anyone had shown her simple kindness without expecting something in return. "I don't want to be a burden. You don't even know me." "My grandmother always said that's exactly when we need to help each other most," Marcus replied. "When we're strangers who need kindness." The ride back to Marcus's property on horseback was unlike anything Sarah had experienced. She sat behind him on the paint horse, trying not to think about how close she was to this kind stranger, or how safe she felt with his steady presence in front of her. Marcus's home was a surprise. She had expected something small and rundown, but instead found a well-maintained ranch house surrounded by neat fences and several outbuildings. In the pastures, she could see at least a dozen horses grazing peacefully. "You raise horses?" Sarah asked as Marcus helped her down from his mount. "Among other things. Mostly I train them for people who want to learn traditional riding, some for therapy programs, some for folks who want to connect with the old ways." Marcus gestured toward his herd with obvious pride. Each one has its own personality, its own gifts. While Marcus went to get his truck, Sarah found herself drawn to the fence. The horses had noticed her presence and several wandered over, curious about the visitor. One, a gentle brown mare with white markings on her face, pushed her nose against Sarah's palm. "That's Singing Wind," Marcus said, returning with his keys. "She was rescued from a bad situation about 2 years ago. Didn't trust humans at all when she first came here. Now look at her." Sarah stroked the mare's soft nose, feeling something peaceful settle in her chest for the first time in months. "She's beautiful. They all are." "You're welcome to visit them anytime," Marcus said. "I can tell they like you." During the drive to town, Marcus told Sarah about his work with horses and his efforts to preserve traditional Lakota horsemanship. He spoke about his grandmother, who had raised him after his parents died in a car accident when he was 12. He talked about the responsibility he felt to pass on the knowledge she had shared with him. "What about you?" he asked as they reached the school. "Besides teaching, what makes you happy?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "I used to know," she finally said. "Before Tom left, before everything fell apart, I had dreams. I wanted to travel, maybe write a book someday. I wanted to give Emma experiences that would help her grow into a confident, independent woman. But now I'm just trying to survive each day." "Dreams don't die just because life gets hard," Marcus said gently. "Sometimes they just wait for us to be ready for them again." Sarah's principal was understanding about her tardiness, especially when she explained about the car trouble. Several of her fellow teachers offered to help with rides, and by the end of the day, she had worked out a temporary carpool arrangement. But it was Marcus who appeared at 3:30, waiting in the school parking lot with his truck. "Thought you might need a ride home," he said when Sarah approached. "And I had an idea about your car situation." During the drive home, Marcus explained his proposal. "I have a friend who runs an auto repair shop. He owes me some favors, and he's always looking for help with bookkeeping and office work. If you're interested, maybe we could work out a trade. You help him get his business organized and he fixes your car. Why would you do this for me?" Sarah asked, overwhelmed by his generosity. "Because everyone deserves help when they need it," Marcus said simply. "And because I have a feeling you're stronger than you know. Sometimes we just need someone to remind us of our own strength." That evening, after Emma was in bed, Sarah sat on her porch and thought about the day's events. For the first time since Tom left, she felt like maybe things might work out somehow. She had met someone who offered help without conditions, who saw her as more than just a woman abandoned by her husband. She thought about the horses, especially Singing Wind, and how the mare had sought out her touch. She thought about Marcus's words about dreams waiting for the right time. And for the first time in months, Sarah allowed herself to imagine that her future might hold something better than just survival. She had no idea that this chance encounter would lead to discoveries about her own heritage, about strength she never knew she possessed, and about a love deeper than anything she had ever experienced. All she knew was that tomorrow felt a little less scary than it had that morning. The bookkeeping arrangement with Marcus's friend Joe turned out to be exactly what Sarah needed. 3 afternoons a week she worked at the auto shop, organizing receipts and updating computer files while Emma did homework in the corner office. Within 2 weeks, her car was running better than it had in years, and Joe was so impressed with her work that he offered to pay her a small salary on top of the car repairs. "You've got a gift for making sense of chaos," Joe told her, looking at his newly organized filing system. "My books haven't been this clean since I opened the shop." But it was the time Sarah spent at Marcus's ranch that really began to heal something deep inside her. She started bringing Emma along on weekend visits, and her daughter fell in love with the horses as completely as Sarah had. "Mom, can I brush Singing Wind?" Emma asked during their third visit. The gentle mare had become her favorite, always coming to the fence when she saw the little girl approaching. "Ask Marcus first," Sarah said, but she already knew what his answer would be. Marcus seemed to understand instinctively what both she and Emma needed. Not just kindness, but the chance to feel useful and capable again. Marcus taught Emma how to brush the horses properly, how to clean their hooves, and how to speak to them in the soft, respectful way that horses respond to. He showed Sarah how to read the animal's body language, how to earn their trust, and how to find peace in their steady, uncomplicated presence. "Horses don't lie," Marcus explained one afternoon as they watched Emma confidently leading Singing Wind around the paddock. "They react to what's really in your heart, not what you pretend to feel. That's why they're good teachers." Sarah was learning more than just horse care during these visits. Marcus shared stories about his grandmother, about traditional Lakota ways of understanding the natural world, and about the importance of living in harmony with all living things. His words carried a wisdom that made Sarah think about her own life differently. "My grandmother used to say that sometimes the spirits send us exactly what we need, but not always in the form we expect," Marcus told her one evening as they sat on his porch, watching Emma play with his 3 dogs in the yard. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, though part of her already understood. "Well, you thought you needed your husband to stay, but maybe what you really needed was to discover who you are when you're not trying to hold someone else together." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, processing this idea. "I was trying to hold him together, wasn't I? For years I was so focused on keeping Tom happy, keeping our marriage working, that I forgot who I was outside of that." "And now?" Marcus asked gently. "Now I'm remembering," Sarah said, surprised by the truth of it. "I'm remembering that I used to be brave. I used to have my own dreams." It was during their 4th weekend visit that Sarah noticed the photographs on Marcus's mantle. They showed him at various powwows and cultural events, dressed in traditional regalia, participating in ceremonies and celebrations. In one photo, he was on horseback leading what looked like a parade or demonstration. "You compete in rodeos?" Sarah asked, studying the pictures. "Not exactly rodeos," Marcus said. "More like cultural preservation events. We demonstrate traditional horsemanship, tell stories about the relationship between our people and horses, teach young people about their heritage. It looks wonderful. You look happy in these pictures." "I am happy when I'm doing this work," Marcus agreed. "It connects me to my ancestors, to the wisdom they wanted to pass down. But it's hard to do alone. I used to have a partner who helped with the educational programs, but she moved away last year to take care of her aging parents." Sarah felt a flutter of interest. What kind of help did she provide? "Teaching mostly, explaining to visitors about the history, the cultural significance of what we were demonstrating, helping with the children's programs." Marcus looked at her thoughtfully. "You know, you'd be good at something like that. You're a natural teacher, and you understand horses now better than most people who've been around them for years." The idea excited Sarah more than she wanted to admit. "But I'm not Lakota. I wouldn't have the cultural knowledge." "Culture isn't just about blood," Marcus said. "It's about understanding, respect, and willingness to learn. My grandmother always said that wisdom belongs to anyone humble enough to receive it." That night, Sarah lay awake thinking about Marcus's suggestion. For the first time since Tom left, she was imagining a future that felt bigger than just surviving. She was imagining a life where she could contribute something meaningful, where she could help preserve something beautiful and important. The opportunity came sooner than she expected. Marcus received a call about a cultural education program at a high school in the next county. They wanted someone to bring horses and talk to students about Native American history and the role of horses in traditional life. "Come with me," Marcus suggested. "See if you like this kind of work." Sarah arranged for a substitute teacher to cover her classes and joined Marcus for the school visit. She watched him transform in front of the students, becoming not just a man with horses but a storyteller, a keeper of ancient wisdom, a bridge between worlds. He spoke about the arrival of horses on the Great Plains, about how they changed everything for the Lakota people, about the sacred relationship between human and horse that went beyond mere ownership. The students were captivated, asking questions and reaching out to touch the horses with genuine wonder. When Marcus asked Sarah to help demonstrate how horses read human emotions, she found herself speaking to the group with confidence she hadn't felt in years. She explained how Singing Wind had been abused and frightened when she first came to the ranch, how patience and consistency had helped her learn to trust again. Sometimes healing takes time, Sarah heard herself saying to a group of teenage faces. Sometimes we have to be gentle with ourselves and others while trust rebuilds. But it's worth it. Look at her now. As if on cue, Singing Wind lowered her head and nuzzled Sarah's shoulder, earning gasps of delight from the students. After the presentation, several teachers approached Marcus about scheduling regular visits. The school counselor was particularly interested in the therapeutic aspects of working with horses. "You two make a great team," she told them. "The way you complement each other's knowledge and teaching styles is really special." During the drive home, Sarah felt energized in a way she hadn't experienced since before her marriage started falling apart. "That was incredible," she said. "Those kids were so engaged, so interested in learning." "You were incredible," Marcus replied. "You have a gift for connecting with people, for making them feel safe enough to be vulnerable. That's rare." Sarah felt a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the praise and everything to do with the man sitting beside her. Somewhere along the way, without her quite realizing it, Marcus had become more than just a kind friend. He had become someone she looked forward to seeing, someone whose opinion mattered to her, someone who made her feel like the best version of herself. That evening, as she tucked Emma into bed, her daughter surprised her with a question. "Mom, do you like Mr. Marcus?" "Of course I like him, sweetheart. He's been very kind to us. No, I mean, do you like him the way people like each other in movies?" Sarah felt her cheeks warm. "Why do you ask that?" "Because you smile different when he's around. You smile like you used to before Daddy got angry all the time, and Mr. Marcus looks at you the way the prince looks at the princess in my books." Out of the mouths of babes, Sarah thought. Her 8-year-old daughter had noticed something that Sarah was only beginning to acknowledge to herself. Yes, she was falling for Marcus Crowfeather, and from the way he looked at her, the way he included her in his dreams and plans, she was beginning to suspect he might be falling for her too. The confrontation with Tom came on a cold November morning, 6 months after he had walked out of their lives. Sarah was at Marcus's ranch, helping him prepare for a winter ceremony where they would honor the horses that had passed during the year. When Tom's pickup truck came roaring up the gravel driveway, Emma was at school. Thank goodness. So she wouldn't have to witness what Sarah suspected would be an ugly scene. Tom climbed out of his truck looking like a different person than the man who had left. His hair was long and unkempt. His clothes were dirty buckskin and wool, and he carried himself with an aggressive swagger that Sarah had never seen before. "So this is where you've been hiding," Tom said, his eyes moving from Sarah to Marcus and back again. "I heard around town that my wife was spending time with some Indian. Didn't believe it at first." "I'm not your wife anymore, Tom," Sarah said, standing straighter. "You made sure of that when you abandoned us." "I didn't abandon anyone. I found my true calling. I'm living the way men were meant to live, free from the chains of modern society." Tom gestured at his appearance as if it proved something important. "I've learned things out there, Sarah, real things. About survival, about what matters." Marcus stepped slightly forward, not threatening, but clearly protective. "This is private property," he said calmly. "And you're disturbing the horses." Tom laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. "The horses are bothered by me? That's rich. You know what bothers me? Coming to town for supplies and hearing that my wife is playing house with some reservation cowboy, while I'm out there learning to be a real man." "Real men don't abandon their children," Sarah said, anger flaring in her chest. "Real men don't walk away from their responsibilities to chase some fantasy about being a mountain man." "Fantasy?" Tom's voice rose. "Lady, I've killed buffalo with my bare hands. I've lived through blizzards that would kill soft people like you. I've found my tribe, my brotherhood. We're the last real Americans living off the land like our ancestors did." "Your ancestors were Italian immigrants who worked in factories," Sarah pointed out. And there are no wild buffalo herds in Wyoming, Tom. You're pretending to be something you're not. There are buffalo, Tom insisted. We hunt them on private ranches. We pay for the privilege, but it's still real hunting. Real meat. Real survival. Marcus made a sound that might have been disgust. Paying to shoot captive animals isn't hunting. It's slaughter. Traditional hunters understood that taking a life meant honoring that life, using every part of the animal, showing respect for the sacrifice made. Don't lecture me about tradition, Chief, Tom snarled. My brotherhood knows more about the old ways than you reservation Indians ever will. The silence that followed was electric with tension. Sarah saw Marcus's hands clench into fists, then deliberately relax. When he spoke, his voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath it. Your brotherhood has been trespassing on sacred lands, leaving trash in our watersheds and disturbing burial sites. That's not honoring tradition. That's desecrating it. We go where we want, Tom shot back. This is America. Free country. Not all of it, Marcus replied. Some of it belongs to people whose ancestors were here thousands of years before yours arrived. Tom took a step forward aggressively, and Sarah moved between the two men without thinking. Stop it, both of you. Tom, what do you want? Why are you here? I want my family back, Tom said, his voice suddenly changing, becoming wheedling and manipulative. I've learned so much, Sarah. I can teach you and Emma how to really live. We could join the Brotherhood. There are other families, women who understand what their men need. Other families? Sarah stared at him in disbelief. You mean other men who abandoned their wives and children for this ridiculous game? It's not a game, Tom shouted. It's survival. It's purpose. It's being connected to something bigger than yourself. I am connected to something bigger than myself, Sarah said firmly. I'm connected to my daughter. I'm connected to my students. I'm connected to work that matters and people who care about more than just their own selfish desires. She gestured toward Marcus and his horses. This is what connection looks like, Tom. Responsibility, service, building something instead of running away from everything. Tom's face grew red with anger. So you're choosing him over your own husband? I'm choosing myself, Sarah said, surprised by her own clarity. I'm choosing the woman I was before I started shrinking myself to fit into your vision of what a wife should be. I'm choosing to be Emma's mother instead of trying to save a man who doesn't want to be saved. You think this Indian loves you? Tom laughed cruelly. You think he's going to take care of you? He's probably just using you for— That's enough. Marcus's voice cut through Tom's words like a blade. You need to leave. Now. This is my wife we're talking about. This is a woman who deserves better than what you gave her, Marcus replied. And if you can't see that, then you don't deserve to be in the same state as her, let alone the same conversation. Tom looked back and forth between them, clearly struggling with something. Finally, he played what he obviously thought was his trump card. What about Emma? She's my daughter. I have rights. You signed away your parental rights when you divorced me, Sarah said. Remember? You wanted complete freedom from all responsibilities. I can change my mind about that. Maybe legally, but not practically, Sarah replied. Emma barely remembers you now. You've been gone 6 months without a single phone call or letter. She's moved on, Tom. We both have. Tom stared at her for a long moment, and Sarah could see him processing the reality that his grand gesture of returning wasn't having the effect he had expected. She wasn't grateful. She wasn't impressed by his transformation into a weekend warrior. She wasn't begging him to take her back. Fine, he said finally, but don't come crying to me when this fantasy of yours falls apart. When he gets tired of playing savior to a desperate single mother. I'm not desperate, Sarah said quietly, and I don't need a savior. I just needed to remember who I am when I'm not afraid. After Tom drove away, spinning his tires and sending gravel flying, Sarah found herself shaking with adrenaline. Marcus put his arms around her and she leaned into his steady warmth. Are you all right? He asked softly. I think so. Actually, I think I'm better than all right. I think I'm free. Sarah pulled back to look at him. Marcus, I need to tell you something. What Tom said about us, about you and me. I know, Marcus said gently. I feel it too. I don't want to complicate your life. I come with baggage, with a daughter, with an ex-husband who might cause more trouble. Sarah, Marcus cupped her face in his hands. You don't complicate my life. You complete it. You and Emma both. You've brought joy and purpose into my world that I didn't know I was missing. But we're so different. Different backgrounds, different cultures. We're not that different, Marcus said. We both believe in taking care of people we love. We both understand that real strength comes from service, not selfishness. We both know that the best parts of tradition are about connection and respect, not dominance and control. Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes, but for the first time in months they were tears of happiness instead of despair. I love you, she whispered, finally admitting what her heart had known for weeks. I love you too, Marcus replied, and then he kissed her, sealing a promise that neither of them had dared to hope for just a few months earlier. That evening, when Sarah told Emma about Tom's visit and about her conversation with Marcus, her daughter's reaction surprised her. I'm glad Daddy came back, Emma said seriously. Now I know for sure that he's not the same person anymore, and I'm glad you chose Mr. Marcus. He makes you happy and he makes me happy too. Plus now I get to have horses in my family. Sarah laughed, hugging her wise little daughter close. Yes, sweetheart. Now we get to have horses in our family. Spring brought changes that Sarah could never have imagined a year earlier. She and Emma had moved into Marcus's ranch house after a simple ceremony in February that combined elements of traditional Lakota customs with the practical needs of creating a blended family. Emma had been the flower girl, walking down the aisle between the pasture, fences while singing wind, and the other horses looked on from their paddocks. The cultural education programs that Sarah and Marcus ran together had grown beyond anything either of them had expected. Word had spread about their authentic, respectful approach to sharing Native American traditions, and they were now booked solid through the summer with schools, summer camps, and community organizations. We need to talk about expanding, Marcus said one morning as they reviewed their schedule over coffee. The demand is there, but we're already working as many hours as we can handle. Sarah looked up from the calendar where she was trying to fit in 3 more school visits. What did you have in mind? Well, Joe mentioned that his nephew just graduated from college with a degree in education and Native American studies. And my cousin Rebecca has been looking for work since she moved back from Denver. Maybe we could bring them in as partners. The idea excited Sarah. She had always dreamed of building something meaningful, and now she could see a path toward creating an organization that would preserve important cultural knowledge while providing good jobs for people who shared their values. I love it, she said, but we'd need more space, more horses, maybe even a proper classroom building. I've been thinking about that too, Marcus said with a grin. Remember that 40 acres adjacent to our property that went up for sale last month? I put in an offer yesterday. Sarah stared at him. Marcus, that's a huge investment. Are you sure we can afford it? We can if this partnership works out. And there's something else. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an official-looking letter. I got a call from the Bureau of Indian Education yesterday. They want to fund a pilot program for cultural preservation education. They're looking for exactly what we're doing. Sarah read the letter twice before the full implications sank in. Marcus, this could change everything. We could hire teachers, buy proper equipment, maybe even offer scholarships for Native kids who want to learn traditional horsemanship. That's exactly what I was thinking, Marcus agreed. My grandmother always said that knowledge is only valuable if you share it. This could be our chance to share it on a scale we never imagined. Over the next few months, Sarah threw herself into the work of expanding their program with an energy that surprised even her. She wrote grant proposals, designed curriculum, and interviewed potential staff members. Emma helped by testing their educational activities on her friends, giving them valuable feedback about what worked and what didn't. The breakthrough came when they were featured in a magazine article about innovative approaches to cultural education. The article included photographs of Sarah working with students and horses, and quotes about her journey from abandoned wife to cultural educator. Within a week of the article's publication, Sarah received a phone call that changed everything. Is this Sarah Martinez? The voice on the phone asked. The woman from the magazine article about the Lakota horse program? Yes, that's me, Sarah replied, wondering if this was another school wanting to book a presentation. My name is Dr. Maria Santos. I'm a genealogist and I specialize in helping people trace their Native American heritage. I saw your picture in the magazine and I have to ask, do you know anything about your maternal grandmother's background? Sarah frowned. Not much. My mother always said her mother was from New Mexico, but she died when my mother was very young. Why do you ask? Because you look remarkably similar to a woman in a photograph I have from the 1940s, a woman named Elena Martinez who was part of a community of Pueblo and Navajo people who intermarried with Hispanic families in northern New Mexico. Would you be interested in learning more about your possible native heritage? The conversation that followed lasted 2 hours. Dr. Santos explained that many Hispanic families in the Southwest had Native American ancestry that had been hidden or forgotten over generations, sometimes due to discrimination, sometimes due to forced assimilation policies. If my research is correct, Dr. Santos said, your great-grandmother was likely born into a Pueblo community, but married a Hispanic man and took his name. This was common in the early 1900s as a survival strategy. Many families found it safer to identify as Hispanic rather than Native. Sarah felt dizzy with the implications. Are you saying I might actually have Native blood? That my work with Marcus might be connected to my own heritage? It's possible. Would you be willing to provide a DNA sample for testing? And perhaps we could arrange for you to visit the Pueblo where I believe your ancestors lived? That evening, Sarah shared Dr. Santos's call with Marcus and Emma. Her daughter was thrilled with the possibility of having Native ancestry, but Marcus's reaction was more measured. How do you feel about this? He asked carefully. Some people spend their whole lives wishing they had Native blood because they think it makes them more interesting or authentic. But blood quantum doesn't make you Native any more than the lack of it makes you non-Native. What matters is how you live, what you believe, how you treat the earth and other people. I know that, Sarah said. And honestly, even if the DNA test comes back negative, it wouldn't change anything about the work we're doing or how I feel about it. But Marcus, what if it's true? What if all this time when I felt like I was learning about someone else's culture, I was actually reconnecting with my own roots? The DNA results came back 6 weeks later, and they were definitive. Sarah was 38% Native American, with genetic markers that pointed specifically to Pueblo and Navajo ancestry, from the New Mexico region where Dr. Santos had suspected her family originated. More importantly, Dr. Santos had found documentation proving that Sarah's great-great-grandmother, Elena Sandoval Martinez, had been born in Santo Domingo, Pueblo in 1889 and had married a Hispanic ranch hand named Carlos Martinez in 1908. Your ancestor Elena was known as a skilled weaver and horse trainer, Dr. Santos explained during a phone call. There are records showing that she continued to participate in Pueblo ceremonies even after her marriage, which was unusual for that time period. She seems to have been a bridge between communities, much like what you're doing now. The news filled Sarah with a sense of completion she hadn't expected. It didn't change who she was or validate her work in any way that mattered, but it explained something she had felt from her first day on Marcus's ranch, the sense of coming home to something she hadn't known she was missing. It's like the horses knew, Emma said when Sarah shared the news with her. Remember how Singing Wind came right up to you that first day? Animals can tell things about people that people can't even tell about themselves. Emma was probably right, Sarah thought. Animals did seem to have an intuition about people that went beyond what humans could perceive. And maybe on some level deeper than conscious knowledge, Sarah had been drawn to this work because it connected her to ancestral memories she hadn't known she carried. The validation of her heritage opened new doors for their program. Several tribal education councils that had been hesitant to work with a non-native educator now welcomed Sarah as a person reconnecting with her own roots. Funding opportunities that had been closed to them became available, but the most meaningful change was internal. Sarah felt a new confidence in her role as a cultural educator, a sense that she wasn't just learning about someone else's traditions, but reclaiming knowledge that belonged to her own family line. My grandmother would have loved this, Marcus said one evening as they watched Emma practice traditional bareback riding techniques in the paddock. She always said that the spirits find ways to bring the right people together at the right time. She would have said that your ancestors led you to us. Maybe they did, Sarah agreed, watching her daughter move with natural grace on horseback. Or maybe we all just found each other when we needed to most. Either way, Sarah knew that her life had taken a direction she could never have imagined when Tom walked out their door. She had gone from being a woman defined by her husband's choices to being someone who made her own path, honored her own heritage, and built something beautiful from the pieces of a broken life. 2 years after Tom had driven away from Marcus's ranch in defeat, Sarah stood before a gathering of 200 people at the grand opening of the Four Directions Cultural Center. The facility included a proper classroom building, expanded stables for 30 horses, and a museum dedicated to preserving the history of human-horse relationships in Plains Indian culture. Emma, now 10 years old and confident beyond her years, stood beside the ribbon that would officially open the center, holding the ceremonial scissors while photographers captured the moment. She had grown into a skilled writer who could demonstrate traditional techniques to visitors, and her natural teaching ability made her popular with younger children who came to the programs. 2.5 years ago, I was a woman who thought her life was over, Sarah said into the microphone, looking out at the crowd of tribal leaders, educators, community members, and supporters who had gathered for the ceremony. My husband had left our daughter and me to pursue what he thought was a more authentic way of living. I felt abandoned, broken, and completely lost. She paused, finding Marcus's face in the crowd. He stood with his cousin Rebecca and Joe's nephew David, the partners who had helped transform their small educational program into a nationally recognized cultural preservation organization. What I didn't understand then was that sometimes we have to lose the life we thought we wanted in order to find the life we were meant to live. Sometimes the spirits have to strip away everything we think we need so we can discover everything we actually are. Sarah's voice grew stronger as she continued. I thought I needed a husband who would stay. What I actually needed was to remember my own strength. I thought I needed financial security. What I actually needed was meaningful work. I thought I needed to belong to someone else's dream. What I actually needed was to build my own. The crowd was completely silent, hanging on every word. Sarah could see tears in several faces, particularly among the women who had their own stories of starting over, of finding strength they didn't know they possessed. The Four Directions. Cultural Center exists because a Lakota horse trainer named Marcus Crowfeather saw a broken-down woman on the side of the road and chose to help her. Not because he wanted anything from her, but because his grandmother taught him that we help each other simply because that's what human beings are supposed to do. Marcus smiled at the mention of his grandmother, and Sarah knew he was thinking about the woman who had raised him with such wisdom and compassion. This center exists because horses are patient teachers who show us how to be gentle with frightened creatures, including ourselves. It exists because traditional knowledge is too precious to lose, and because young people deserve to know the stories and skills their ancestors fought to preserve. Sarah gestured toward the group of staff members who now worked full-time for the center. It exists because when people work together with shared purpose, they can build something larger than any individual dream. As Emma cut the ribbon and the crowd cheered, Sarah felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this moment. The frightened woman who had sat in a broken-down car on Highway 87 would never have imagined that her car trouble would lead to this. After the ceremony, as people toured the facilities and watched demonstrations by students and staff, Sarah found herself in the museum section, standing before a display about her own family history. Dr. Santos had helped create an exhibit about Hispanic families with Native heritage, and Elena Martinez's story was featured prominently. She looks like you, said a voice behind her. Sarah turned to find an elderly Pueblo woman studying the photograph of her great-great-grandmother. People say that, Sarah agreed. I only learned about her 2 years ago. I wish I had known about her when I was growing up. Knowledge finds us when we're ready for it, the elderly woman replied. Your ancestor would be proud of what you've built here. She was known for bringing different communities together, for helping people understand each other better. How did you know her? Sarah asked, surprised. I didn't know her personally. I'm not that old. The woman laughed. But I knew her daughter, your great-grandmother Rosa. She used to visit our pueblo when I was a child. She always said her mother taught her that culture isn't about keeping people apart. It's about helping them find what they share. That evening, after all the visitors had gone home and the staff had finished cleaning up, Sarah and Marcus walked through the empty center with Emma, checking on the horses and marveling at what they had accomplished. Are you happy, Mom? Emma asked as they stopped to pet Singing Wind, who was now elderly but still gentle and wise. Happier than I ever imagined I could be, Sarah said honestly. Are you happy, sweetheart? I'm happy we found our real family, Emma said, leaning against Marcus's side. He had officially adopted her 6 months earlier, after Tom had voluntarily terminated his parental rights in exchange for being left alone by child support enforcement. What do you mean, our real family? Marcus asked. Well, Daddy Tom was related to us by blood, but he didn't act like family. You and me and Mom, we're not all related by blood, but we take care of each other. And all the horses and Rebecca and David and all the people who work here. We're all family because we choose to be family. Marcus and Sarah exchanged a look over Emma's head. Their 10-year-old daughter had articulated something profound about the nature of love and commitment that many adults never learned. You're absolutely right, Sarah said, wrapping her arms around both of them. Family isn't just about who you're born to. It's about who shows up for you, who helps you become the person you're meant to be, who celebrates your successes and supports you through your failures. As they made their way back to the house, Sarah thought about the letter she had received the previous week. Tom had written from somewhere in Montana, where he was apparently still living his fantasy life with the Brotherhood of the Buffalo. The letter was full of complaints about how unfair life had treated him, how his former brothers had turned against him over some dispute about hunting territories, how he was now alone and struggling to survive. He hadn't asked to come home. He hadn't expressed any interest in seeing Emma. He had simply wanted Sarah to know that his grand adventure hadn't turned out as he had expected, and perhaps to receive some sympathy for his troubles. Sarah had read the letter once and then thrown it away. She felt neither anger nor satisfaction at his struggles. She felt nothing at all toward the man who had once been her husband, and that absence of feeling was perhaps the clearest sign of how completely she had moved on. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Tom had never left? Marcus asked as they reached the house, almost as if he had been reading her thoughts. Sarah considered the question seriously. Sometimes, but honestly, I think we would have been miserable. I was becoming smaller every year, trying to fit into his idea of what a wife should be. Emma would have grown up thinking that love means accepting being treated badly. I would never have discovered my heritage, never have found work that feeds my soul, never have learned that I'm capable of building something meaningful. And I would never have found either of you, Marcus added. I would still be living alone, doing good work, but missing the joy that comes from sharing your life with people who truly understand you. That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah and Marcus sat on their porch looking up at the stars. The sounds of their horses moving peacefully in the pastures created a gentle background symphony. Sarah thought about all the ways her life had changed since that morning, when her car had broken down on Highway 87. She had learned that strength wasn't about holding on to things that were falling apart, but about having the courage to let go and rebuild. She had discovered that love wasn't about desperately trying to keep someone who wanted to leave, but about opening your heart to people who chose to stay. Most importantly, she had learned that sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of a much better one. Tom's choice to leave her for his buffalo meat fantasy had set her free to become the woman she was always meant to be. A woman who could stand on her own, who could build something beautiful from scratch, who could love without fear because she finally knew her own worth. No regrets? Marcus asked softly, taking her hand. None, Sarah said firmly. Not a single one. Everything that happened, even the painful parts, led us here. Led us to this life, this work, this family we chose to build together. As they sat in comfortable silence, Sarah sent a mental thank you to her ex-husband, wherever he was in Montana. His selfishness and abandonment had hurt her terribly at the time, but ultimately his choice to leave had been the greatest gift he could have given her. It had forced her to discover who she really was when she wasn't trying to save someone else, and who she really was, it turned out, was someone worth saving.